Going live now, Rich.
Okay.
Worldwide, faith-based, community-driven streaming media. The Voice 17104.com from the Allison Hill District of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Now broadcasting community radio from Studio A and community television from Studio B on the Voice 17104.com.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the Richard James Show on 17104, The Voice. When in disgrace and fortune in men's eyes, all alone we weep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate. The more things change, the more they remain the same. Welcome, my friends, to the Richard James Show. Dealing with issues and problems that continue to exist in our society. There was a big lie after the November election. Tremendous lie. Joe Biden won the election by over 8 million votes. This election had the most participation of any election in American history. That's a fact. Donald Trump, in a losing cause, received 74 million votes. No one had ever received 74 million votes before in a political election in the United States of America. Joe Biden, former Vice President of the United States, former Senator from the state of Delaware, received 80 million votes. Can you imagine? There are 330 million people who live in the continental United States of America. 74 million for Trump, 80 million for Biden. This was an extremely important election. The face of America had changed with the election of Donald Trump. Was that 5 years ago? He brought into it a crudeness, an attitude toward the world and toward his country and toward minorities that had never been seen before. Making blatant racist comments about people of color with no regard, with no problem. Just hey, racist statement. And he indicated before the election end that there's no way he could lose. And that if he so-called lost the election, that individuals cheated. So he has perpetuated what we call the big lie. And the amazing thing about it is that the Republican Party is supporting that lie all over the nation. Legislators, states have been putting forth legislation to try to curtail voting, mainly directed at African Americans, people of color, but also directed at the poor. Things like you can't bring water and food to people who have been standing in the line for an hour or two, an hour or three. Georgia, the peach state, they call it. I call it the pecan state. My home. I was born in Thomasville, Georgia. I love Georgia. But the legislature of Georgia and its racist governor signed into law bills to prohibit people, and I say people, of color, women, uh, poor whites from voting, trying to make it more difficult for them to vote. And when we take a look at today's situation, much, much different than it was back in the 50s and in the 60s and in the 70s, particularly when we look at African American leadership. First of all, we have a stronger and larger middle class. And that's a fact. It's not trying to make it any worse than it is. We do have a large uh, number of poor people also. We have issues of homelessness. We have issues in terms of education. We have other things that we have to worry about. But we also have a more formidable group of educated people. And a part of that change in our society has come from African American schools. Uh, Also, it's come from African Americans that have gone to major universities in this country, not just African Americans, Asian Americans, Native Americans, Indian Americans, people of color are beginning to get the tools that they need to bring about change. You see, back when I was heavily involved in the civil rights struggle, we were limited in terms of some of our organizations. We had organizations such as Congress of Racial Equality, which no longer, well, it exists in a very limited capacity. It's gone crazy in terms of its direction. It's no longer really the dynamic civil rights movement that it was back in the day. Been taken over by right-wing conservative blacks who espouse the Donald Trump philosophy. It's a whole different thing. We had the NAACP. We had had SNCC. We had the Southern Leadership Conference. We had Marcus Garvey's organization. So we had a different kind of context. Today, we do have young people who have stepped forward and taken the helm and have organizations such as Black Lives Matter. I love that. And when I look at demonstrations after the major reaction to police brutality and the murdering of innocent Black men and women all over the world. And this is one thing I love about this era that we're living in right now. All over the world, young people reacted, they demonstrated, they protested, they let people in authority know that you just can't take a human life and not be held accountable. The system all along has supported police brutality and murder. Courts, the system, in every phase supported it when they knew it was wrong. And today we do have some God-fearing, decent police officers who do not go along with this, who want people to be treated equally, who want rules and regulations to make sure that law enforcement is able to do its job. And yes, I think we continue to need law enforcement, but we need honest, well-trained, well-disciplined officers that have a plan. We need community-based policing. We want stations in place right down in the community. We want police officers to get out of that car and walk the beat. We want that. And let me tell you, until you have a sound system with training, with community interaction, with people who live in the community, you will continue to have problems of police brutality, problems of crime. We also want an effective law enforcement system and plan to rid our communities of crime. Crime and murder is on the rise all over the country, particularly in African American communities. It's happening. Don't close your eyes. Don't say what James saying that on TV. It's the truth. I want my wife, my daughter, my grandchildren to be able to visit their friends, live in their home, and not be subject to being shot or killed directly or accidentally. An accidental shot is just as bad as one that's directed at you. They both kill you. And in order to deal with that type of circumstance, we as a community have got to come together. And one thing that we have that is an issue and is a problem is sometimes we tend to fight each other. We tend to blame each other for that problem and that issue. I honor and respect the leadership that exists today within the African American community. You got people like Al Sharpton. Some people are critical of Al because Al seems to be Johnny on the spot whenever there's an issue or a problem. But if you listen to what he said, Al's saying some very intelligent things, and he's gotten more mature as a leader, and he's grown very, very well. I mean, he's no Martin Luther King, and he's no Malcolm X, but he is who he is. Al Sharpton, Reverend Al Sharpton, one of many, many Black leaders that exist today. And God is taking home many of our other Black leaders. They're gone. There is no Malcolm X. There is no Reverend Martin Luther King. There is no Stokely Carmichael, Fred Hampton, Amir Baraka. Father Time only gives us so many years and so many days on the planet Earth. We have a few leaders left that are still here, that are aging, like myself. And so time moves on, and young people who are assertive, who are prepared, who are honest, must take the realm and move it forward. Black leadership today. We can't expect to ever have another Du Bois. Du Bois had his day. Another Marcus Garvey. Another Paul Robeson. They had their day. And a new day is coming. We cannot allow individuals with their racist agenda, whether it be Republican or Democrat, and it seems like they're predominantly Republican these days, to come up with anti-voting legislation We tried to kill Jim Crow a long time ago. It just seems that his ghost continues to reign. We cannot allow these different legislators all over the country to come up with laws to prevent people from voting. They were shocked that so many of us, greater percentages of African Americans, are coming out tenfold. And greater percentages of white Americans of goodwill have come out. And with that combination, along with Asian Americans, Japanese, Chinese, Indians, Native Americans, women, men, people of color, people who are righteous in their beliefs, come out and support the dethroning of bigotry and hate, dethroning individuals who would like to uh, allow their egos to rule the day and forget about poor, impoverished countries throughout the world. One thing I love about what's happening with Joe Biden is that he realized the importance of having good relationships with allies and friends. And so he said, America is back. America is back. The world looks to America, the richest nation on earth, with the strongest armed forces on earth. First of all, to be just in how we treat our own people. They expect us to lift up human rights, but also some of them are impoverished. I just heard the other day that Joe Biden is sending 500 million doses of this antivirus vaccine in the poor development countries. India, which is the second largest country in terms of population in the world, is experiencing a crisis and reaching out to the world for help in order to bring this ridiculous and crazy virus under control. But I say to African Americans, leaders of today, when we give us thy arms, let thy right hand knoweth what thy left hand doeth, that thy arms may be in secret, and my Lord which seeth in secret will reward you openly. In other words, it's not about our ego. It's not about a quick pro quo. It's about doing the right thing. Unfortunately, we had a president that was totally wrapped up in his own ego. And he wanted people to just march to his music, whether it was legal, whether it was right, whether it was wrong. And if you did not march to his music, then he turned the record player off. And people who supported him, gave money to him, did everything for him. And when one thing that he wanted him to do, and it might have been illegal, and they know they can't do it, so they won't do it, he wants to destroy it. That is a problem. That's an issue. And we hope that we'll be able to move past that. Now, I want to say this. 4 years will pass so quickly, you won't know what happened. It's going to be critically important that right now that we begin to organize positive, meaningful change. And I'm going to lift up an old slogan: give peace a chance. There is too much violence going on in this world. You don't end war by going to war. Why can't we begin to try to settle issues and problems in a peaceful manner? If we're Christians, if we're Muslims, if we're Hindus, if we're Jews, we need to do the right thing and work to get along with each other. Okay, that's the first half of my show. I just wanted to present to you some information on what's happening with Black leadership in today's world. But I also wanted to talk to you about a former mayor of Harrisburg. Some of you won't agree with me, some of them may be angry with me, but we're talking about Stephen R. Reed. Stephen R. Reed was born in 1949 in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and raised in the city of Harrisburg. Many of our folks had political differences with Mr. Reed. And indeed, Mr. Reed made some very, very difficult decisions that may have cost him in the long run. Why do I raise up Stephen Reed? I raise up Stephen Reed because I feel that Stephen Reed, aside from some of the issues and problems that he had, was probably one of Harrisburg's greatest mayors. 7 terms he served. He was Harrisburg's longest serving mayor, and that might have been a part of his problem. But sometimes when you serve such a lengthy amount of time, then you begin to forget some things. And he was in election with Linda Thompson, young, dynamic, attractive, bright, smart woman who was one heck of a campaigner and who defeated Stephen Reed, fairly, and became the first African-American female and the first female to become mayor of the city of Harrisburg. But I want to just, I have a video here from an old friend of mine from back in the 60s, a gentleman by the name of Corky Goldstein, who I respect tremendously, who gives an unbiased overview of Steve Reed's term as mayor. Steve did some good things. Steve did some great things, which Corky will explain to you. One reason I raise up Corky is that Corky has always been a friend. Back in the 60s, when Corky came back home from Philadelphia, I think he was a graduate from Temple University, practiced law somewhat down there, and he returned home to Harrisburg because he was a Harrisburg born and raised. And he fought for the little guy. And I'm going to say that. Corky fought for the little guy, the guy who people didn't pay any attention to. He headed up one of the anti-poverty programs called Legal Services. And he was an attorney. And he fought many, many cases. But I'm just going to say this also, and this might ruffle some feathers. There were members of the Jewish community back in the day and today who supported civil rights very, very strongly. I was out front during the civil rights movement, and we had members of the Jewish community that marched with us, went to jail with us, demonstrated, and also gave their lives and were murdered. Sad to be said. So, and I was the so-called radical. But one thing I do is develop love relationships with people and honor those individuals who do good for us. And so I'm just going to read a little poem uh, that I wrote uh, with Corky in mind and with other members of the Jewish community in mind. It's called Let's Look Past Our Differences. To the Jewish people in America, my message is simple and complete. We love you. When slavery was America's total view of the Black man, you joined hands with us. You marched with us. You were there when Du Bois founded the NAACP. You were there when we formed the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, the Ladies Garment Workers Union, the Urban League. You were there. You were always there for us. You marched with us in Selma, Montgomery, Chester, and cried with us when King was slain. You sent money, time, love, and you sent your lives. When others fled, fearing their fate, you stood with us. We will never forget your friendship. Let the naysayers dwell on disunity and disconnect. We must continue to support truth, freedom, and equality for all people. And when one of us is attacked, we all suffer. To the Jewish people in America, let us continue to stand together. We must not let the forces of bigotry, racism, and anti-Semitism divide us. We will not allow individuals that export hate to separate us. To the Jewish people in America, this is a call to arm ourselves with peace and love against those who would destroy us. Let us repeat those blessed words uttered by you after the death camps, after the Holocaust. Never again, never again, never again, never again, never again, never again, never again will we ever be caught unaware. We will do what is necessary to survive. Never again will we allow hate to destroy and harm God's people. I send that out not only just to the Jewish people, but to the Asian people, to the Puerto Ricans, to the Mexicans, to the Polish, to the Irish, to all people who come together in unity and love to bring about change. I say that because I'm having a video that's being presented by a member of the Jewish community about one of our ex-mayors who passed away. And now we want to talk about his situation, talk about who it is. Let's take a look at Corky Goldstein.
I was not surprised with the raid last week of former Mayor Steve Reed's home in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Dauphin County, who was many times named one of the top mayors in America. He served 28 years. Investigators who conducted the raid were from the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office, and they took out lots of property and many artifacts from his home. The entire street was blocked off, and there were reporters from all over the state of Pennsylvania camped out all day. There have been ongoing rumors and innuendos and public comments on social media and in print for many, many years that have identified him and other well-known local names, law firms, and financial operations as having done something possibly illegal. They believe that threw Harrisburg, Pennsylvania into a financial disaster. So this raid was only a part of the work of the now statewide grand jury that's meeting in Pittsburgh, and it is apparent that the purchases of the artifacts by Mayor Reed himself, which cost multi-millions, is just a part of their interest. But we must remember this raid does not indicate that Mayor Reed or anyone else that has been named on any other source did anything illegal, even if Mayor Reed or some others are indicted. Now, will this raid itself be the beginning of the total destruction of the lengthy and, in my own personal opinion, extraordinary legacy of tremendous accomplishments of Steve Reed? I certainly hope not. I must say that Mayor Reed, when he became mayor, was only 32 years old. He had already, though, distinguished himself as an effective political leader. And he inherited, at that time, a city that was on the verge of bankruptcy. Most of the critical problems he faced were brewing for many years. But Steve took the challenge, and over the years, the city of Harrisburg truly prospered. Just to name a few of his significant accomplishments for the city, and many can be seen today: the Hilton Hotel, the magnificent City Island, the Harrisburg Senators baseball team, the tremendous Harrisburg University, the beautiful Civil War Museum. He also left a great police and fire department, a new city hall, that really great restaurant row in downtown Harrisburg, great additions and improvements to many well-known parks and playgrounds that had become a disaster. He also left a very responsive and highly trained river rescue. Then there's the beautiful boat on the Susquehanna River called the Pride of the Susquehanna. The improvements and maintaining of one of Harrisburg's real jewels, the Italian Lake, and many other significant, lasting projects were built in the city. And he also had many much-needed social programs that he established throughout the entire city and well beyond. He was awarded so many state and national awards for his work that there are too many to mention right now. His well-known government and his governance stretched far beyond the city and was written about all over the country. His personal passion and his night and day work ethic set an ongoing, highly positive tone for the people, and I was one of them, and not just residents of the city, but all over Pennsylvania and beyond, that the Harrisburg capital city was definitely in good hands. So what happened? Did he stay much too long as mayor? I definitely think so.
Okay.
I don't think anyone should be mayor of any city in America for more than 2 4-year terms, like in Philadelphia. Things started to look troubling, I think, about the last 10 years of his reign. Remember, that does not mean there was any illegality, but the multi-million-dollar debt at our incinerator and the purchase of millions and millions of dollars of artifacts and how the entire debt developed has caught great anger and honorable questions and is finally being investigated along with other financial transactions by a statewide grand jury from the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office. And there's also possibly the federal government looking into all of this. Why this investigation has taken so many years to occur, frankly, is not a question I can answer. The first receiver that was appointed by the governor for Harrisburg that was failing, David Unkovic, he called for a written investigation several years ago when he resigned under very unusual circumstances. There was a well-respected independent audit that was prepared years ago, and that was at least, I think, a beginning roadmap for investigative authorities to follow and see where that led. There has been even a state Senate investigation in Pennsylvania of a small part of this entire debt that was accumulated. These have all raised red flags and finger pointed for many. However, we have to remember that under our system of laws, that because there is an attorney general investigation and possibly even indictments might come, that we cannot assume there was any illegal activity. It could have been bad judgments or things just didn't work out. We must remember, just as you would want if you were one named, people are entitled to due process under law from the time of any indictments through the entire case. Now, if there are any indictments, the fact even that there is a grand jury investigating does not mean there was any illegality. As Oling, at a grand jury, the prosecutors present the case. There is no defense. We have to recognize that all individuals who possibly are named or might be indicted are innocent until proven guilty. Whatever happens, I certainly hope this will result in finally putting these many years of controversy to rest. You know this to be a fact. Rumors and innuendos can and have and do destroy reputations and careers. And we all have to give everyone the fair opportunity that we would all want if we were named, when the time comes, if it comes, to defend themselves. Frankly, I would think that those already publicly named for several years now would finally want the opportunity in court to clear their names.
This was a excellent presentation uh, by Corky Goldstein. Gave an excellent overview, highlighting the many, many, many contributions that Steve Reed made. In fact, as he said, he was honored and considered one of the most outstanding mayors throughout the country, not just in Harrisburg, but he did a lot of things, a lot of positive things to turn Harrisburg around. Now let's just talk for a minute about these purchases of these different items. Steve Reed had a tremendous passion for history. He loved history. He was responsible for the creation of a fire museum. He wanted to create a sports museum. I think that was on the drawing board. And he did help to create and was a part of the Civil War Museum. Now, some people may ask, why a Civil War Museum? Now, if you go to the Civil War Museum, there's a story to be told. because this area was involved in the Civil War. As a matter of fact, the Battle of Gettysburg was one of the major battles that turned things around. It was only a few miles from the city of Harrisburg. The Civil War Museum also talks about slavery, and they had some. It's a wonderful edifice, and this was the brainchild of Stephen R. Reed. The other thing is, to us African Americans, and maybe you have forgotten already, but we once had a African American museum without walls here in Harrisburg. A young woman, I think Jackie was originally from DC, I'm not sure, but Jackie Penn had an idea that she wanted to develop an African American museum for the city of Harrisburg. And she recruited some people who to help her to do that and develop an organization. I was a part of that. I was a member of that organization. I had also been a part of a museum in the state of New Jersey. So I was very, very much interested in maintaining uh, history, being able to express valuable arts and that kind of thing. But we developed a museum. We call it a museum without walls. In other words, we were contemplating the possibility of having a facility in which we could display uh, uh, items uh, that depicted the accomplishments of African Americans. And Steve Reed supported that. He thought it was a great idea. As a matter of fact, he had his own African American history program. He had an enrichment program that he did every year. And he gave speeches on African American history. And I don't know of too many whites or individual politicians that had the in-depth knowledge of African American history that Steve Reed did. So Steve Reed, I met with him, and Jackie Penn met with him, and he put together an advisory group in order to try to put together a African American museum. But during a particular time, other issues came up, other problems came up, and he during the interim period lost the election to Lyndon Thompson, and other folks were just not interested in the museum. I personally think it was a great idea. Uh, I know Jackie Penn, who put her heart and soul in that effort, and who was frowned upon, was hurt, and sort of stepped away, and has not been really seen since. Because she worked so hard. She did a wonderful job, extremely brilliant woman, thoughtful, intelligent woman. And so it didn't happen. We did not get the museum that we want, the African American Museum. I went ahead on my own. I have a certain passion for the native land, for the motherland. So I put together my own museum, African Museum, not African American, African Museum. Uh, we are indeed Africans. We are African Americans, but our roots, our ancestors, our genealogy, we're Africans. And so I did that, and we ran that for several years, but we're not able to get the funding to continue to do that. And Steve Reed supported me. He really did. He supported me. Also, I got support from the superintendent of schools in Middletown, uh, Superintendent Utley, supported my efforts, and we worked hard to make that work, but it didn't. But one thing to say this, that Reed had a love for history, and those artifacts, he didn't buy those artifacts for himself. It was not a personal kind of thing. His whole intent was to put those artifacts into a museum. Now, it never happened. He lost an election, so the artifacts were there. Now, they did have the indictment, they did have the trial, and Stephen Reed was not sent to jail. He was given probation. The sad thing is that he didn't live very long after that. I mean, he's been dead now for less than a year, and he passed at the age of 70, uh, which was sad. And what I hate to see is his legacy tarnished when he did so many great things. Uh, and you take a look at some of the problems and issues he had, and does that override or overshadow the wonderful things that he did? I don't think it does. I think that we have to respect and honor what people do. We have to honor and lift up things that are very positive. Uh, the Hilton Hotel, the new Hilton Hotel, his idea. Uh, Harrisburg University. We have a university, a Harrisburg University. Whose brainchild was it? Steve Reed's brainchild. We have a new city hall. Years and years and years and years, our city hall was at the foot of State Street. Building getting older and more worn. I think they turned it into condominiums now. But the Martin Luther King Center was Steve's idea. And now that's City Hall. You know, there's a whole controversy centered around the name Martin Luther King. Remember, we at one time had changed the name Market Street to Martin Luther King Boulevard, and then some of the white businesses complained about the street change. Now, there are Martin Luther King streets all over the country that still exist. And matter of fact, we not only have Martin Luther King streets, we have a Martin Luther King holiday in existence. But when we try to name a street here in Harrisburg Martin Luther King, then the racists show their horns. But anyway, Reed did a switch. So he named City Hall as Martin Luther King Center. And I think that's a wonderful idea. Rather than just driving up a street, you know, you can go into a beautiful, wonderful edifice that honors the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who was a man of peace, a man of love, and also a man who pushed the idea that all men are created equal. And they're endowed by certain inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. King did that, and Reed lifted up him by naming City Hall that. We have lots of things that have happened in Seattle since I've been. The Dickinson Center, several schools that have come together and as a university. Harrisburg has 49,000 people, and they say it's the 13th largest city in the state of Pennsylvania. But we do have Temple campus, Dixon University, Harrisburg University, and across the river we have Central Penn College. So academics are very important. And a part of building that legacy, making that happen, was the brain thrust and brainchild of the former mayor of Harrisburg. The old saying, we ain't gonna study the boy no more, or we ain't gonna beat up Steve Reed no more. Steve Reed is now in the ground, he's gone. But his legacy will remain. The things that he did, they say the good things sometimes perish in the grave, and the bad things live after them. Let's hope that others will honor the existence of Steve Reed and not allow the press to continue to beat up and denounce what was once a great American. We need to do good things for people who are here now. There's things that we need to do in the city of Harrisburg. We need to clean up the Susquehanna River, which is a cesspool. Okay, uh, we need to go into the uh, community because we have a housing problem. We have deteriorating old buildings uh, that we need to do something about. That we need to get some money to rehab some of those houses. Uh, we have a problem of homelessness, which is all over the country, and we're hoping that with a new conscientious president of the United States, that maybe we can begin to deal with those issues. But those issues that exist in Detroit and Chicago and LA and in Seattle in Wilmington, in Boston, in Miami, in Jacksonville, Tampa, those problems also exist in Harrisburg. Homelessness. And with this virus that shut down our economy for a period of time and caused the death of over 600,000 people in this country, uh, things got even worse for the poor. When it's bad for the middle class, it's death to the poor. And that's what has happened. Uh, thank God Congress saw uh, a possibility of helping and sent out these stimulus checks, which helped to tide some people over. Also, they had passed a law that prolonged the eviction notices that were being sent out to individuals. I think that was a positive kind of thing. We continue to need support and an effort to bring us back. Some people think that's socialism. I had one good friend of mine said, "Oh, he would not accept the stimulus check if somebody has to pay for it." Of course, somebody has to pay for it. But would you rather have children starve? Would you rather have neighborhoods deteriorate? Would you rather have businesses, particularly small businesses, uh, uh, closed than to have the government step in and help? It's not a matter of the government trying to control things or control the community. It's what we ought to do as human beings. It's what we ought to do as people to reach out and help someone to make it happen. And also, I mean, in every phase, not just in business, housing is a problem, education is an issue too. We need to make sure that everybody is getting an education that they deserve. Uh, Biden comes out with a possibility of developing a program where in the country so people could get uh, free community college for the first 2 years or 4 years, that they will be able to get money to support them to continue their education. All of this is positive. All of this is helpful. Some of the positive things uh, that Steve Reed did will live after him. Uh, and some of the things were picked up. Some good things were done also by Linda Thompson when she came in, particularly in the area of education. Positive things are done within this community. Now we're going to have a change of mayors. We had a primary election. Wanda uh, Williams uh, possibly will be our next mayor of Harrisburg. And it sounds like she has a wonderful, wonderful program outlined uh, for the community. She is concerned about going to neighbors and dealing with the issue of poverty. I think we've got to do that. We've got to deal with poverty. And what goes hand in hand is things like homelessness, uh, which is a problem. Some people just don't have a home. Some people are living in abandoned buildings. They're living on the street. Uh, you can get away with some of that in the winter, but when it, I mean, in the summer, but when it turns winter, then it really becomes an issue. Yeah, dealing with the issue, the poverty, and we've got to work with the Biden administration uh, and the positive people in Congress to bring about some change to alter our system to make sure that our system works for everybody and has some type of program that will allow individuals to pull themselves up and bring about change. Uh, Not everyone has the necessary skills or intellect to go to college, but they have some skills. There are things that they can do. So I think technical schools, I remember Booker T. for Washington, who was the first president of Tuskegee Institute, said, cast down your buckets where you may. In other words, use what skills you have. The technical schools are important also, extremely important. And then we now uh, have to use the computer. Everything is computerized. Everything is computerized. So we need to make sure that we have an education which teaches folks those systems. I'm still learning. I don't know very much about, how to do this or how to do that on the computer, but I am trying to learn how to do it. But one thing that happens if we do this, then we increase our ability to communicate. We can increase our ability to share information and to be able to help each other. Uh, this crisis, for example, in terms of health, this worldwide epidemic, is really, really critical that we support each other. And I think that's happening to a degree. And with Biden in office, I think it's going to happen even more, where we're going and make sure that our allies have the support that they need. We need to make sure that happens. And I think that is happening under the leadership of our new president. Our situation on the border is a very difficult one. Kamala Harris had been saddled with the task of trying to deal with that issue. And it's very difficult when we have all of these poor nations in South America who are struggling where they are, who also have dealing with the epidemic, but also have an epidemic of unemployment, hunger, and those kinds of things. So the word is that, there's food in America. The word is there's jobs in America. The word is if you can just get across the border, things gonna be all right. And of course, Mr. Trump has a serious problem with that. And we cannot afford to disallow people to illegally cross the border. It has to be in some kind of organized framework. And so Kamala Harris is going visiting those nations, taking a look at what's going on in there and see where we can be helpful and bringing about change in those nations. And thank God we elected a African-American female who is brilliant. She graduated from the University of California Law School. She graduated, before that, she graduated from Howard University. She's an AKA, she's a member of the Link organization, and she's doing a great job. Again, I want to thank you for tuning in. We try to bring you information that will be very helpful to you. We wanted to lift up Stephen Reed. He's in the ground now, but he did some things that were very positive while he was alive. He made some mistakes, some errors, which he paid for. But sometimes this man was mayor, been 7 times and won 7 times. And I think poor people was one time when he said, maybe sometime you can serve too long. And that can bring about problems and bring about issues. But we lift that up. We also lift up the involvement in African-American leadership and trying to make this country better. I always like to remind you that I'm still down there in Lebanon at 35 South 8th Street. We open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I'm still selling African clothing, African artifacts, and art. I got some of the most beautiful art you ever want to see. Come by and see. Give me a holler. Give the old man a play, okay? We will treat you right. My ultimate goal is to reopen my African American Museum. Stay tuned. It's going to happen. I'm not sure exactly when, but it's definitely going to happen. Again, I always lift up and honor Chris Thomas and his family for the work they're doing and providing this a vehicle for communication. And we appreciate your support. Thank you, Chris, for continuing to be the person that you are. Okay, much love to y'all. Look forward to hearing from you next week and seeing you next week. Take care. Richard James, signing off, your neighbor and your friend.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Richard James Show. Our African and our African American programs are set up to educate you on what's going on in this world. And thank you for taking out the time to listen. Let's hear from you sometime also. So this is your neighbor and your friend signing off. Until I see you again next week and hear from you again next week. So long. God bless.